The telegram arrived on a Tuesday morning in September 1883, changing Sophia Warren's life with words as cold as the Boston rain streaking down her boarding house window. Father deceased, debts substantial, marriage arranged, departure Friday, Wyoming Territory awaits. Sophia read the message 3 times before her hands stopped shaking enough to set it down on the narrow writing desk. 22 years old and suddenly an orphan, though she had lost her mother to fever years ago. Her father, a merchant with expensive tastes and poor judgment, had apparently spent his final months arranging her future like one last business transaction. A mail-order bride. The phrase tasted bitter in her mouth, but the alternative was debtor's prison or worse. The lawyer's follow-up letter provided sparse details. Augustus Dalton, cattle rancher, Beaver, Utah Territory, age 26, financially solvent, seeking wife for companionship and household management. The arrangement included payment of her father's debts in exchange for her hand in marriage. Simple, transactional, practical. She packed her life into 2 trunks, sold what little remained, and boarded the westbound train with a worn copy of Wuthering Heights and a heart wrapped in ice. If marriage was to be a business arrangement, she would approach it with the same detachment her father had shown his failing ventures. Expect nothing, feel nothing, survive everything. The journey west stretched endlessly. Train cars rattled and swayed, carrying her through landscapes that transformed from green hills to endless plains to dramatic mountain ranges. Other passengers came and went. A family with 3 squabbling children, a group of miners heading to Colorado. An elderly woman who knitted constantly and asked too many questions, Sophia deflected with polite smiles. When the train finally pulled into the station at Beaver, Utah Territory, late afternoon, sun painted everything gold and orange. Sophia stepped onto the platform, her traveling dress dusty despite her best efforts, her hair escaping its pins after days of travel. The air smelled different here, dry and clean, carrying scents of sage and dust, and something wild she could not name. She searched the sparse crowd for someone who might be Augustus Dalton. Her imagination had conjured various versions during the long journey, old and weathered, young and cruel, indifferent, cold. She expected nothing good because expecting nothing was safer. Miss Warren. The voice came from her left, deep and careful. She turned. The man standing there removed his hat, revealing sun-darkened hair the color of wheat fields and eyes that were startlingly blue against his tanned face. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing work-worn clothes that spoke of honest labor. Young, perhaps only a few years older than herself, with strong features and an expression that seemed almost nervous. "Mr. Dalton," her voice came out steadier than she felt. "Yes, madam. Augustus, though most folks call me Gus." He held his hat in both hands, turning it slightly. "I hope your journey was not too difficult." It was adequate. She kept her tone neutral, businesslike. This was a transaction. She needed to remember that, needed to keep the walls firmly in place. "I have 2 trunks. Of course, I will get them loaded." He hesitated, then added, "There is a decent hotel here in town. I thought you might want to rest tonight, and we could have the ceremony tomorrow if that suits you. Give you time to recover from traveling." She had expected to be rushed immediately to a preacher, to have the business concluded as quickly as possible. The consideration surprised her, created a small crack in her carefully maintained armor. She forced it closed. That would be acceptable. The hotel was simple but clean. Gus carried her trunks upstairs himself, set them carefully inside the room, then stood awkwardly in the doorway. "There is a dining room downstairs. I could bring you something if you would rather not go down, or if you prefer, we could eat together. Whatever you are comfortable with. I can manage on my own, thank you. The words came out sharper than intended, but she saw his face close slightly, become more guarded. Good. Better he understood this was business from the start. I will be at the boarding house down the street. Tomorrow at 10, if that suits you, we can meet at the church. It is just 2 blocks east. Reverend Morrison will perform the ceremony. 10 o'clock. I will be there. He nodded, placed his hat back on his head, and left. Sophia closed the door and leaned against it, releasing a breath she had not realized she was holding. This was happening. This was real. She did not sleep well that night, despite the exhaustion from days of travel. The bed was comfortable enough, but her mind would not quiet. Tomorrow she would marry a stranger. Tomorrow she would become Sophia Dalton, wife of a cattle rancher in Utah Territory, bound by law and circumstance to a life she never imagined. Morning came too quickly and too slowly. She dressed carefully in her best dress, dark blue with modest lace at the collar and cuffs. Her mother's pearl earrings, the only jewelry she had not sold. Hair pulled back in a neat bun. Hands that trembled only slightly as she fastened each button. The church was small and made of wood that had weathered to silver gray. Gus waited outside, dressed in what were clearly his finest clothes, dark trousers and a vest over a clean white shirt. He had shaved and tamed his hair, though one piece still fell across his forehead. He looked young and serious and almost as nervous as she felt. "You look very nice," he said quietly. "Thank you." She clutched her small handbag tighter. "Should we proceed?" The ceremony was brief and impersonal. Reverend Morrison read from his book in a monotone that suggested he had performed this ritual countless times. Gus's responses were quiet but clear. Sophia's voice sounded distant to her own ears, as though someone else was speaking the words that bound her life to this stranger's. "You may kiss your bride." Gus leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wished. His lips brushed hers gently, briefly, more formality than affection. His eyes, when he pulled back, held something she could not read. They signed the registry. Reverend Morrison's wife and the church caretaker served as witnesses. And just like that, Sophia Warren became Sophia Dalton. Outside, sunlight seemed too bright, the day too ordinary for something so life-altering. "The ranch is about an hour's ride from town," Gus said. "I have a wagon. If you are ready, we can head out, or if you need more time in town." "I am ready." What else was there to say? What else was there to do? The wagon was sturdy and practical, pulled by 2 strong horses. Gus loaded her trunks into the back with ease, then helped her up onto the bench seat. His hands were gentle, steadying her without presumption. He climbed up beside her, took up the reins, and they started moving. Beaver sat in a valley surrounded by mountains that rose dramatic and beautiful against the blue sky. As they left town, the landscape opened into rolling terrain dotted with sagebrush and juniper. The road was rough but maintained, cutting through land that seemed to stretch forever. "The ranch has been in my family for about 8 years, Gus said after a while, his voice careful, as though testing whether she wanted conversation. "My father started it, brought cattle up from Texas. He passed 2 years ago. Heart gave out. My mother died when I was young, so it has been just me and the ranch hands since then. 3 men who work the place. Good men. They live in the bunkhouse, so you need not worry about privacy." Sophia nodded, processing this information. A man alone trying to run a ranch. That explained the mail-order bride, she supposed. He needed help, someone to manage a household, cook meals, mend clothes. A transaction. "What are your expectations?" The question came out more blunt than she intended, but she needed to know the terms of their arrangement. Gus was quiet for a moment, eyes on the road ahead. "I expect we will figure things out as we go. I know this is not what you would have chosen. I am not fool enough to think otherwise. But I hope we can build something decent together. Respect each other. Make a life that is not unbearable. Not unbearable. Such a low bar, yet somehow it felt almost kind. And at night, she forced herself to ask, cheeks burning, "What are your expectations there?" His hands tightened on the reins, and she saw color rise in his face as well. "You are my wife in the eyes of the law and the church. But I will not force anything on you. When you are ready, if you are ever ready, that will be your choice to make. Until then, I can sleep in the barn or make up a bedroll elsewhere in the house." The answer surprised her so much that she turned to look at him fully. His jaw was set, eyes still forward, but she saw something in his expression that looked almost like shame. "Why?" The word escaped before she could stop it. "Because marriage should be more than a transaction, even if that is how it started. Because you deserve to be treated with respect and dignity. Because my mother taught me better than to treat a woman as property." He glanced at her then, those blue eyes meeting hers directly. "I know I am not what you dreamed of when you were a girl, but I will try to be decent to you. That much I can promise." Sophia looked away, something uncomfortable twisting in her chest. She had armored herself against cruelty, against indifference, against being used. She had not prepared for kindness. The ranch appeared gradually, first as a distant cluster of buildings, then resolving into details as they drew closer. A main house, modest but well built, with a covered porch, a large barn, weathered red paint, several corrals, a bunkhouse, various outbuildings. In the pastures beyond, cattle grazed peacefully, brown and white shapes against the golden grass. Mountains rose in the distance on all sides, creating a valley that felt both open and protected. A creek ran along the northern edge of the property, lined with cottonwoods that were just starting to turn gold with autumn. It was beautiful. Sophia had not expected that. Gus pulled the wagon up to the main house and set the brake. 3 men emerged from the barn, clearly curious about the new arrival. Gus jumped down and came around to help Sophia descend. "Jack, Tom, Henry, this is my wife, Sophia," Gus said simply. "Sophia, these are the men who keep this place running." The 3 ranch hands were varied in age and appearance. Jack, the oldest, had gray threading through his beard and eyes that crinkled with what looked like perpetual good humor. Tom was younger, maybe Gus's age, stocky and strong-looking. Henry appeared barely 20, tall and lanky with an easy smile. "Madam," they chorused with varying degrees of formality, removing their hats. "It is nice to meet you all," Sophia managed, feeling suddenly overwhelmed by these strangers, this place, this entire situation. "Give us some privacy, boys," Gus said, not unkindly. "We will see you at dinner." The men dispersed back toward the barn, though Sophia caught them glancing back with obvious curiosity. Gus retrieved her trunks and carried them toward the house. Inside was neat and clean, if Spartan. A main room with a fireplace, simple furniture that was functional rather than decorative. A kitchen area with a good stove and a sturdy table. 2 doors leading to what she assumed were bedrooms. "I cleaned as best I could," Gus said, setting the trunks down. "I know it is not fancy. You can change things however you like. Rearrange, add whatever you need. There is money for supplies." Sophia walked slowly through the space, taking it in. Clean windows, swept floors, empty shelves waiting to be filled. A house that was maintained but not lived in, not really. Just a place where a man slept between long days of work. "The larger bedroom is through there," Gus continued, gesturing to one door. "It has the better bed, more space. You should take it. I will use the smaller room." "That is not necessary. You should keep your own room." "I insist." His tone was gentle but firm. "Please, Sophia, let me do this much." The use of her name, the first time he had said it since the ceremony, created another crack in her armor. She nodded, not trusting her voice. He carried her trunks into the larger bedroom. It was simple like the rest of the house, but the bed was well made with a thick quilt, and there was a wardrobe for her clothes, a small table with a basin and pitcher, a chair near the window that overlooked the front of the property. "I will let you settle in," Gus said. "Take your time. No rush on anything. If you are tired from traveling, you can rest. If you are hungry, there are supplies in the kitchen. Make yourself at home." Then he was gone, closing the door quietly behind him. Sophia stood in the center of the room, her room now, in this house that was supposed to be her home, married to a man she did not know who was showing her more consideration than she had expected. She should feel relieved. Instead, she felt confused, off balance. She had prepared herself for so many scenarios, but not for this. Not for basic human decency that made it harder to maintain her emotional distance. She unpacked slowly, hanging her dresses in the wardrobe, arranging her few personal items on the table. Her mother's hairbrush, the copy of Wuthering Heights, a small daguerreotype of her parents from happier times, such small artifacts of a life left behind. When she finally emerged from the bedroom, the house was quiet. Through the window, she could see Gus working near one of the corrals with the ranch hands. He had changed into work clothes, and he moved with the easy confidence of a man in his element. Sophia explored the kitchen, taking inventory. Flour, sugar, coffee, dried beans, salt pork, potatoes. Basic supplies kept by someone who cooked only for necessity. She found herself planning meals almost without thinking, falling into familiar patterns from when she had kept house for her father. Dinner. She should make dinner. Something to do, a way to be useful, a role she understood. She built up the fire in the stove, filled a pot with water from the pump outside, and set about making something resembling a stew with what ingredients were available. It felt good to work, to have purpose, to focus on something concrete rather than the overwhelming uncertainty of everything else. The sun was setting when Gus knocked softly on the open door before entering. "Something smells good," he said, surprise evident in his voice. "It is just stew, nothing fancy." She continued stirring, not looking at him. "Should I prepare enough for the ranch hands as well?" "No, they cook for themselves in the bunkhouse, but thank you for offering." He hesitated, then added, "You did not have to cook tonight. You must be exhausted from everything." "I wanted to. I need to earn my keep." "Sophia." He waited until she looked at him. "You are not a servant. You are my wife. This is your home. You do not have to earn anything." "Then what am I supposed to do?" The words came out sharper than intended, frustration breaking through her careful control. "What is my purpose here? What do you want from me?" Gus looked tired suddenly and older than his years. He pulled out a chair and sat at the table, running a hand through his hair. "I want a partner," he said quietly. "Someone to share the load with. The ranch is a lot of work, and it is lonely doing it alone. I thought if I could find someone, maybe we could build something together, not just a working arrangement, but a real marriage, a home, maybe eventually a family." "You want children?" It was not a question. "Someday, yes, if that is something you want too, but there is no rush. We barely know each other. I am not going to pressure you into anything." Sophia turned back to the stove, emotions tangled and confusing. Children, family, a real marriage. Those were things she had dreamed about once, before her father's death, before the telegram, before she learned that her worth could be measured in dollars needed to pay debts. They ate dinner in awkward silence, the scrape of spoons against bowls too loud. Sophia had to admit the stew turned out better than expected, and Gus ate with genuine appetite, complimenting the meal twice. "I usually eat whatever I can throw together quickly." he admitted. "This is a real improvement. Thank you." After dinner, Gus helped clear the table, then excused himself to check on the animals one last time before bed. Sophia washed the dishes, dried them, put them away. Small domestic tasks that felt surreal in their normalcy. When Gus returned, full darkness had fallen outside. He banked the fire, checked the locks, then stood awkwardly in the main room. "I will say good night then," he said. "If you need anything, I am just in the next room, and Sophia—" He waited until she met his eyes. "Thank you for being here. I know you did not choose this, but I am grateful anyway." She nodded, not trusting her voice, and retreated to her bedroom. She changed into her nightgown, braided her hair, and climbed into bed. The mattress was comfortable, the quilt warm. Outside, she could hear the wind rustling through the trees, the distant sound of cattle, a coyote calling somewhere in the darkness. This was her life now. This ranch, this house, this stranger in the next room who was legally her husband. She had expected to feel trapped, miserable, resigned to endurance. Instead, she felt confused and uncertain and unable to maintain the emotional distance she had relied on. Sophia Warren, now Dalton, fell asleep with tears sliding silently down her cheeks, though she could not have said exactly what she was crying for. The first weeks passed in a strange rhythm of domesticity and distance. Sophia rose early, cooked breakfast, maintained the house. Gus worked from dawn until well after dark, came in exhausted, ate whatever she prepared with genuine gratitude, and retreated to his room. They were polite with each other, careful, like strangers sharing space while trying not to intrude. But slowly, in small increments, things began to shift. Gus started coming in for lunch, taking a break from work to share a meal with her. They talked about small things at first: the weather, the cattle, repairs needed on the barn, safe topics that required no vulnerability. Then one afternoon, as Sophia mended one of his shirts, he asked about Boston. What was it like growing up there? She looked up, needle pausing mid-stitch. Crowded, noisy, very different from this. She gestured vaguely toward the wide open spaces visible through the window. Everything here is so vast. At home, I mean in Boston, everything was close together. You could hear neighbors through the walls, smell cooking from nearby apartments, see people everywhere you looked. Do you miss it? The question surprised her. She considered it honestly. I miss what it was before my mother died, when my father was still successful, when things were stable. But the place I left, no, I do not miss that. Gus nodded slowly. My mother died when I was 8. Fever took her in winter. I still miss her sometimes, even after all these years. It was the most personal thing he had shared. Sophia felt something soften inside her chest. What was she like? Strong, kind. She used to sing while she worked, silly songs that made my father smile. His expression was distant, remembering. She taught me to read. Not many ranch women knew their letters that well, but she had been a teacher back east before she married my father. She said education was important, that knowing things made you free. She sounds wonderful. She was. He met Sophia's eyes. She would have liked you, I think. Would have appreciated how hard you work, how you have made this house feel like a home in just a few weeks. The compliment made her uncomfortable, too close to genuine warmth. She returned her attention to the mending. I am just doing what needs to be done. You are doing more than that. You do not have to, but you do anyway. That says something about your character. Sophia did not know how to respond, so she said nothing. But the words stayed with her, turning over in her mind long after Gus returned to work. Another shift came the day Sophia decided to explore beyond the immediate ranch buildings. She packed a simple lunch and walked along the creek, following it upstream through the cottonwoods. The day was beautiful, autumn crisp and clear, leaves golden overhead. She found a spot where the creek widened into a small pool, clear water flowing over smooth stones. She sat on the bank, eating bread and cheese, letting the peace of the place seep into her bones. For the first time since her father's death, she felt something close to contentment. The sound of hoofbeats made her turn. Gus rode up on a rangy brown horse, concern evident in his face. "I came back for lunch and you were gone. I was worried something happened." "I am sorry. I should have left a note. I just wanted to explore a bit." He dismounted, led his horse to drink from the creek. "No, you do not need to apologize. This is your home too. You can go wherever you want." He glanced around. "This is a nice spot. My mother used to bring me here when I was small. She called it her thinking place. I can see why. It is peaceful." Gus sat down a respectful distance away, removing his hat and running fingers through his hair. "I should show you the property boundaries, teach you to ride if you do not already know how. That way you can explore safely without worrying about getting lost or crossing onto someone else's land." "I have never ridden a horse." The admission felt embarrassing somehow. "Would you like to learn?" she considered. Freedom to move, to explore, to have independence beyond the house. "Yes, I think I would." His face lit up with a genuine smile, the first real one she had seen from him. It transformed his features, made him look younger and more carefree. "We can start tomorrow if you like. I have a gentle mare that would be perfect for learning." So began riding lessons that became the best part of Sophia's days. Gus was patient and encouraging, teaching her how to approach a horse, how to saddle and bridle, how to mount and sit properly. The mare, Daisy, was indeed gentle, tolerating Sophia's initial awkwardness with placid acceptance. "You are a natural," Gus said after her first week of lessons, watching as she managed to trot Daisy around the corral without bouncing too awkwardly. "You have good instincts. I have a good teacher." The words came out warmer than she intended, less guarded. Their eyes met and held for a moment longer than necessary. Something passed between them, unspoken but present. Then Daisy snorted and tossed her head, breaking the moment, making them both laugh. That night at dinner, conversation flowed more easily. Gus told stories about ranch life, about cattle drives and difficult winters, and the time a coyote got into the chicken coop and caused havoc. Sophia found herself laughing genuinely, the sound surprising them both. "I like hearing you laugh," Gus said quietly. "You should do it more often." The words created warmth in her chest that she tried to ignore. This was still an arrangement, still a transaction. She could not afford to develop real feelings, could not risk the vulnerability that came with caring. But her heart was beginning to ignore her head's warnings. October brought the first real cold snap. Sophia woke one morning to frost covering the windows in delicate patterns. She dressed quickly, shivering despite the layers, and went to build up the kitchen fire. Gus was already up, feeding logs into the fireplace in the main room. "Winter comes early here," he said. "We will need to make sure we are well stocked on supplies before the heavy snow hits. I need to go into town today to pick up some things. Would you like to come along? You have not been off the ranch since you arrived." The offer surprised and pleased her. "Yes, I would like that." They took the wagon into Beaver, the morning air crisp and clear. The town was busier than when Sophia had arrived, people preparing for winter. Gus helped her down from the wagon, and they walked together toward the general store. People nodded and greeted them, curious eyes taking in the new Mrs. Dalton. Sophia felt exposed under their scrutiny, but Gus stayed close, his presence somehow protective without being possessive. In the store, the proprietor's wife, Mrs. Henderson, greeted them warmly. "Gus, it is good to see you, and you must be Sophia. Welcome to Beaver. We are so glad to have another young woman in the area." The friendliness felt genuine. "Mrs. Henderson asked about the ranch, shared town gossip, and helped Sophia select fabric for new curtains and a few other household items she mentioned wanting. "You come visit me anytime," Mrs. Henderson said as they prepared to leave. "It can get lonely out on those ranches. Us women need to stick together." Outside, Gus loaded their purchases into the wagon. "Emily Henderson is good people. She means what she says about visiting. You should take her up on it if you want." "Maybe I will." Sophia realized she meant it. Making a friend, building connections in this place, felt less frightening than it had weeks ago. They stopped for lunch at a small restaurant. Sitting across from Gus at the table, eating pot roast and vegetables, Sophia was struck by how normal it felt. How comfortable she had become in his presence. "Thank you for bringing me today," she said. "I did not realize how much I needed to get away from the ranch for a bit. We can make it a regular thing if you like. Every couple of weeks, come in for supplies, see people, break up the routine." He paused, then added more quietly, "I want you to be happy here, Sophia, or at least not miserable." "I am not miserable." The words came out before she could consider them. "I thought I would be, but I am not. You have been kind to me, kinder than I expected. Kinder than I probably deserve given how cold I have been." "You have not been cold. You have been protecting yourself. I understand that." His blue eyes were direct, honest. "This situation we are in, it is not easy, but I think we are doing okay finding our way. Do you not agree?" "Yes," she admitted. "I think we are." On the drive back to the ranch, something had shifted again. The silence between them felt companionable rather than awkward. When Gus pointed out landmarks, telling stories about the area, Sophia listened with genuine interest. When the wagon wheel hit a rut and she was thrown against his side, neither of them pulled away immediately. That night, Sophia lay in bed and allowed herself to acknowledge what she had been denying. She was developing feelings for her husband. Real, complicated, frightening feelings that went beyond transaction and obligation. The realization terrified her. November brought snow and shorter days. Sophia and Gus fell into closer proximity by necessity, driven indoors by weather, spending longer evenings together by the fire. They played cards, talked, shared stories about their pasts. Slowly, carefully, they were building something real. One evening, Gus was repairing a piece of tack while Sophia darned socks. The fire crackled pleasantly. Outside, wind howled and snow fell steadily. "Can I ask you something?" Gus said, not looking up from his work. "Of course." "Why did your father arrange this marriage? I know about the debts, the lawyer explained that. But you are educated, intelligent, capable. You could have found other options, surely." Sophia's hands stilled. She had not talked about this, about the desperate final months in Boston, about exactly how bad things had gotten. "My father's debts were substantial. Criminal charges were being considered. I had no family willing to help, no money of my own, no prospects for respectable employment that would pay enough to matter. The lawyer my father hired in his final days presented this as the only viable option. A marriage that would settle the debts and remove me from an untenable situation." She forced herself to continue. "I felt I had no choice, so yes, I saw it as a transaction because that is what it was presented as. I thought it would be businesslike, emotionless, potentially awful. I came here prepared to endure. And now," his voice was quiet, careful, "now I do not know what to think." The honesty escaped before she could stop it. "You confuse me, Augustus Dalton. You are not what I expected. This life is not what I expected." He set down his work, turning to face her fully. "You confuse me too. I thought I was getting a practical arrangement, someone to help run a household in exchange for security. Instead, I am discovering an intelligent, strong, fascinating woman who makes me want things I had given up on." "What things?" "Real partnership. genuine companionship, maybe eventually love. He held her gaze. I know that is not what you signed up for. I am not demanding anything. But I need you to know that for me, this stopped being just a transaction weeks ago. Sophia's heart hammered in her chest. She should deflect, maintain distance, protect herself. Instead, she found herself saying, "For me too." The air between them felt charged, heavy with possibility. Gus stood slowly, crossed to where she sat and held out his hand. "Dance with me. There is no music. We can make our own." She placed her hand in his, let him pull her gently to her feet. He began humming, a simple melody, and guided her in a slow waltz around the small space. His hand at her waist was warm, his touch careful but confident. She had never been this close to him before, had carefully maintained physical distance. Now, pressed against him, swaying to his humming, she felt walls crumbling that she had built so carefully. His eyes never left her face, and in them she saw want and restraint and something deeper that made her breath catch. When the dance ended, he did not immediately let her go. They stood frozen, inches apart, his hand still at her waist, hers still on his shoulder. "I would very much like to kiss you properly," he said quietly. "Not like at the wedding, but really kiss you." "May I?" She nodded, not trusting her voice. He lowered his head slowly, giving her time to change her mind. When his lips met hers, it was gentle at first, questioning. She responded, surprising herself by leaning into the kiss, by parting her lips when his tongue tentatively sought entrance. The kiss deepened, became something hungry and needful. His arms wrapped around her, pulling her closer. She pressed against him, hands sliding into his hair, all her careful control dissolving. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against hers. "Sophia," he breathed, "I am falling in love with you. I think I have been for weeks." "I am terrified," she whispered back. "I do not know how to do this, how to trust this. We will figure it out together. No rush. We move at whatever pace you need." He pulled back enough to meet her eyes. "But I need you to know I want you. Not as a transaction or an obligation, but as my true wife, my partner. Eventually, if you are willing, my love." She kissed him again, answering without words what she could not yet say aloud. They stood by the fire for a long time, holding each other, exchanging kisses that grew gradually more heated. Finally, breathing ragged, Gus pulled away. "I should say good night before I lose all sense of propriety. Stay." The word escaped before she could consider it. "Not in my bed, not yet. But stay here with me a while longer. I am not ready to be apart." So they settled on the floor by the fire, cushioned by blankets Sophia fetched. They lay in each other's arms, talking quietly, sharing kisses, gradually growing bolder in their touches but respecting the boundaries Sophia needed. Eventually, she fell asleep there, safe and warm against Gus's chest. He must have carried her to bed sometime in the night because she woke at dawn in her room, still dressed, covered with quilts and profoundly changed. The next weeks were a revelation. They grew closer daily, physically and emotionally. Gus courted her properly now, bringing her wildflowers he found despite the encroaching winter, reading to her in the evenings, teaching her about ranching and listening when she talked about books she loved and dreams she had harbored before her world collapsed. He was endlessly patient with her skittishness around physical intimacy. They kissed frequently now, touched easily, but when she pulled back or showed hesitation, he immediately gave her space. "I am sorry," she said one evening after stopping his hand from moving higher on her waist. "I want to, but I am frightened." "Of me?" The concern in his voice was genuine. "No, of caring too much, of giving myself completely and then losing it. I lost my mother. Then my father, though he was gone in every way that mattered long before he actually died. Then my entire life in Boston. Everything I cared about was taken away. Tears spilled down her cheeks. If I give you my heart and something happens, I do not know if I can survive it. Gus gathered her close, holding her while she cried. I cannot promise nothing will ever happen. Life is uncertain and often cruel. But I can promise I will never willingly hurt you or leave you. I can promise I will fight with everything I have to build a life with you. And I can promise that loving someone, even with the risk, is better than protecting yourself and never really living. His words unlocked something inside her. She looked up at him, at this good man who had shown her kindness when he could have treated her as property, who had courted her when he could have simply demanded his marital rights, who was offering her genuine love when their arrangement required only practical cooperation. I love you, she said, the words feeling both terrifying and freeing. I did not want to, I tried not to, but I love you, Augustus Dalton. The joy that flooded his face was worth every risk. Say it again, he breathed. I love you. He kissed her deeply, thoroughly, and when he pulled back, his eyes held a question. Yes, she whispered, answering it. Tonight. I am ready. He stood, scooped her into his arms despite her startled laugh, and carried her to the bedroom that had been hers alone. Inside, he set her down gently, then lit the lamp with shaking hands. I have never done this before, he admitted, color rising in his cheeks. I want to do right by you, but I might fumble it. The vulnerability in his admission made her love him more. Neither have I, we will learn together. What followed was tender and awkward, and occasionally clumsy in the way of two people discovering intimacy for the first time. But it was also beautiful and affirming and bonded them in ways that went beyond physical. Gus was careful with her, attentive to her responses, stopping when she needed him to, continuing when she urged him on. When it was over, they lay tangled together, breathless and changed. Are you all right? Gus asked, brushing damp hair back from her face. Better than all right. That was wonderful. It will get better, we will get better at it, he grinned. Lots of practice needed. She laughed and swatted his shoulder. Is that so? Absolutely. I take my responsibilities very seriously. They made love twice more that night, indeed getting better at it, learning each other's responses, growing bolder in their explorations. Between sessions, they talked and laughed and simply held each other. For the first time since her father's death, since the telegram that had upended her world, Sophia felt truly happy. The transaction had become something sacred, something real. She was exactly where she was meant to be. Morning brought reality in the form of ranch work that could not be postponed, but it also brought new intimacy. Gus kissed her thoroughly before rising, pulled her against him in the kitchen while she made coffee, touched her constantly as though reassuring himself she was real. The ranch hands definitely noticed the change. Jack made some teasing comment that made Gus's face go red, and Sophia ducked her head to hide her smile. But there was genuine warmth in the teasing, happiness from these men who cared about their boss. Winter deepened and the days grew short, but inside the ranch house, there was warmth and light and growing love. Sophia and Gus were inseparable now, truly partners in every sense. They worked together maintaining the household, planned for spring calving, discussed improvements they wanted to make to the property. In December, Gus brought home a scraggly pine tree he had cut in the mountains. For Christmas, he explained. My mother always insisted on a tree. We can decorate it however you like. They spent an evening stringing popcorn and cutting decorations from paper. It was simple and childlike and wonderful. On Christmas morning, Gus gave her a beautiful saddle, custom-made for her. So you can ride out with me whenever you want. Be a true rancher's wife. Sophia gave him a warm scarf she had knitted and a new shirt she had sewn. But her real gift was the news she had suspected for weeks, and confirmed with Mrs. Henderson during a recent town visit. "I am with child," she said quietly, watching his face. "If my calculations are right, we should meet him or her in late summer." The joy and wonder in his expression made her eyes fill with tears. He gathered her close, held her tightly, laughed and cried at the same time. "A baby! We are having a baby!" He pulled back to look at her. "Are you happy? Is this something you want?" "Yes. I am terrified, but yes, I want this. I want a family with you." That night they lay in bed with his hand on her still flat stomach, talking about names and futures and the family they were creating. The transaction had become a true marriage. The stranger had become her love. The arrangement had become everything she had secretly dreamed of, but never thought she would have. Winter gave way to spring with its usual chaos of mud and new calves and long days of work. Sophia's pregnancy progressed normally, though morning sickness made the first few months challenging. Gus was attentive and worried, wanting to wrap her in cotton and keep her safe. "I am pregnant, not fragile," she reminded him repeatedly. "Women have been doing this since the beginning of time." Still, he fussed, made sure she rested, took on extra household tasks, brought her special treats from town. She found his concern endearing rather than stifling, evidence of how much he loved her. By midsummer, her belly was round and prominent. The baby kicked actively, especially in the evenings. Gus would place his hands on her stomach and talk to their child, telling stories about the ranch, making promises about the life they would share. Mrs. Henderson had agreed to attend the birth, having helped deliver most of the babies in the area. She visited regularly, checking on Sophia, offering advice and reassurance. "You are healthy and strong," she said during one visit. "You should have no problems. But I will be here when the time comes, and Doc Martin is in town if we need him." August arrived hot and dry. Sophia was uncomfortable and eager to meet their child. Gus had prepared everything they might need, cleaned and organized until the house was nearly sterile in its readiness. Labor began on a Tuesday afternoon, starting as a backache that gradually intensified into unmistakable contractions. Gus sent Tom racing for Mrs. Henderson, then hovered anxiously while Sophia tried to reassure him between pains. "Women do this every day," she reminded him, gripping his hand as another contraction peaked. "Not my woman. Not my baby." Mrs. Henderson arrived and took charge efficiently, banishing Gus from the bedroom despite his protests. The labor was long and difficult. Sophia lost track of time, focused entirely on the overwhelming physical reality of bringing a child into the world. Finally, as evening light streamed through the window, their son entered the world with a powerful cry. Mrs. Henderson cleaned him quickly and placed him in Sophia's arms. He was perfect, tiny and red-faced and squalling, with a surprising amount of dark hair and eyes that would likely be blue like his father's. Gus was allowed back in, and the expression on his face when he saw his son was something Sophia would treasure forever. Wonder and love and overwhelming emotion made him look young and vulnerable. "He is beautiful," Gus breathed, reaching to touch the baby's hand with one finger. Tiny fingers wrapped around his, grip surprisingly strong. "What should we name him?" They had discussed various names but never settled on one. Now, looking at her son, Sophia knew, "Andrew, after your father, Andrew Warren Dalton." "Andrew," Gus repeated, testing the name. "It is perfect. He is perfect." He leaned down to kiss Sophia's forehead. "You are amazing. I cannot believe what you just did. How strong you are." The first weeks with Andrew were exhausting and wonderful. He was a good baby, relatively calm, though he woke frequently to nurse. Gus helped however he could, walking Andrew when he was fussy, changing him, singing the silly songs his own mother had sung. "I love watching you with him," Sophia said one evening, nursing Andrew while Gus sat beside her. "You are a wonderful father. I am trying. I want him to have better than I did, to grow up knowing he is loved and wanted." He stroked Andrew's downy head. "I want him to know what a real marriage looks like, what partnership and love look like. He will never doubt that his parents chose each other, chose this life." But Sophia heard the underlying truth. We did not choose each other at first, not really. Maybe not at first, but we chose each other eventually. We chose to build something real from something transactional. That matters more, I think. We could have kept this as just an arrangement, distant and practical. Instead, we chose love. That is more meaningful than some romantic first meeting. He was right. Sophia looked around their home, at the baby in her arms, at the man beside her who had become her everything. She had arrived in Utah Territory believing marriage was just a transaction, a business arrangement between two parties for mutual benefit. Augustus Dalton had shown her it was so much more. Marriage was a sacred promise between two people to build a life together. It was choosing each other every day. It was partnership and compromise and learning to put someone else's needs alongside your own. It was creating a family and a home and a future together. Andrew made a small sound, milk-drunk and content. Gus wrapped his arm around Sophia, pulling her against his side. Outside, the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. This life, this family, this love. It was everything she had never dared to hope for. The years that followed were full and rich. Andrew grew into a sturdy boy with his father's blue eyes and his mother's stubborn determination. When he was 3, Sophia gave birth to twin girls, Anna and Emma, who were identical in appearance but opposite in temperament. Anna was cautious and thoughtful, Emma bold and adventurous. The ranch prospered under Gus's management and with Sophia's help. They expanded the herd, built a larger barn, made improvements to the house. Jack eventually retired, but Tom and Henry stayed on, becoming like family. Henry married a woman from town and they built a small house on the property. Sophia never forgot where she came from or how she arrived at this life. Sometimes she thought about the telegram that had upended everything, about the frightened young woman who had boarded that westbound train expecting misery. That woman would not recognize the life Sophia had built, would not believe the love she had found. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Gus presented her with a beautiful leather-bound journal. "For your stories," he said. "You are always telling the children tales. You should write them down." Inside the cover, he had inscribed, "To Sophia, who taught me that sacred promises are kept not just in words but in daily choices to love and honor each other. Forever yours, Augustus." Tears filled her eyes as she read it. "I have something for you too." She gave him a photograph she had commissioned on their last trip to Salt Lake City. It showed their family, all 5 of them, dressed in their finest clothes. Andrew stood tall beside his father, already showing signs of the man he would become. The twins flanked Sophia, their faces serious for the camera but mischief lurking in their eyes. "Our family," Gus said, voice thick with emotion. "Everything that matters most." They hung the photograph in the main room where it would be seen daily, a reminder of what they had built together. More years passed. Andrew grew into a young man who loved the ranch as much as his father did, who showed promise of being an even better rancher than Gus. The twins developed their own interests. Anna loved learning and books, reminding Sophia of herself. Emma was happiest outdoors, riding horses and helping with the cattle. When Sophia was 38 and Gus 42, they welcomed a surprise 4th child, a son they named Samuel. By then, Andrew was 16 and the twins were 13, old enough to be delighted by their baby brother. "I thought we were done," Sophia admitted to Mrs. Henderson, who attended this birth as she had the others. "I was not expecting another." "Life keeps surprising us," Mrs. Henderson replied with a smile. "Best to just accept it with grace." Samuel was a sweet baby who grew into a gentle child, preferring books and drawing to ranching. Gus and Sophia encouraged all their children's interests, never forcing them into predetermined paths. "Let them find their own way," Sophia said. "Give them options we never had." The children grew and changed, bringing joy and challenges in equal measure. Andrew took over more ranch responsibilities, becoming Gus's true partner in running the operation. Anna expressed interest in teaching, following a path similar to her grandmother's. Emma declared her intention to run her own ranch someday, scandalizing some of the more traditional neighbors but making her parents proud. Samuel showed talent in art, creating beautiful sketches of ranch life. Through it all, Sophia and Gus remained devoted to each other. Their love had deepened over the years, tempered by challenges weathered together, strengthened by the life they had built. They had their arguments and disagreements, but they always worked through them with respect and communication. On their 20th anniversary, they took a rare trip without the children, traveling to Salt Lake City for a week. It felt strange to be alone together after so many years of constant family activity. "I barely remember what it is like to have you to myself," Gus joked as they settled into their hotel room. "We should do this more often. The children are old enough to manage without us for a while." They spent the week exploring the city, attending theater performances, eating in nice restaurants, and simply enjoying each other's company. The spark between them had never faded. If anything, it had grown stronger with deep knowledge and partnership. One evening, walking through the city streets, Sophia stopped to look at Gus in the lamplight. "What?" he asked, smiling at her expression. "I was just thinking how lucky I am. How different my life could have been if I had married someone else, if you had been cruel or indifferent. If we had kept this as just a transaction instead of building something real." "The luck was mine," he said firmly. "You made me better, made my life have meaning beyond just work and survival, gave me a family and a home that is more than just a building. You showed me what it means to truly love someone. We showed each other. It was never just one of us. It was always both of us choosing this, building this, protecting this." He pulled her close, kissed her there on the street with the same passion he had shown on their wedding night and every night since. When they pulled apart, both were smiling. 20 more years," he said. "At least. Probably 40 or 50 if I have any say. Deal." They returned to the ranch renewed and reconnected, ready to tackle whatever came next. The years continued their relentless forward march. Andrew married at 25, bringing home a kind young woman named Sarah who fit into the family perfectly. They built a house on the property and started their own family, giving Sophia and Gus their first grandchild. Anna moved to Salt Lake City to attend normal school, training to become a teacher. She wrote long letters home describing her studies and the city. Emma, true to her word, had begun saving money to purchase her own property, working additional jobs in town to supplement what she earned helping on the family ranch. Samuel had gained some recognition for his artwork, selling pieces to wealthy buyers in Salt Lake and Denver. Sophia and Gus watched their children launch into their own lives with pride and bittersweetness. The house felt emptier without them, but also full of memories and love. "We did well," Gus said one evening as they sat on the porch, watching sunset paint the mountains. He was 52 now, with silver threading through his hair and lines around his eyes from decades of sun and wind. But to Sophia, he was as handsome as the nervous young man who had met her at the train station. "We did very well," she agreed. She was 48, her own hair showing silver, her body bearing the marks of 4 pregnancies and years of hard work. But she felt beautiful in Gus's eyes, which had never stopped looking at her with love and desire. "You ever regret it, coming here, marrying me?" "Never, not once. Not even in the hardest times." She took his hand, their fingers intertwining automatically. "This life, our family, our love, it is everything I never knew I needed. You showed me what marriage could be, what it should be. You showed me too, I thought I was getting help with the ranch. Instead, I got a partner who made me want to be better, do better, build something meaningful." They sat in comfortable silence as darkness fell and stars emerged in the vast sky above. Inside, they could hear Andrew and Sarah putting their children to bed in the room they used when visiting. The sounds of family, of life continuing forward. "What comes next?" Sophia asked. "More of this, watching our grandchildren grow, supporting our children in their own lives, growing old together." He squeezed her hand. "I cannot think of anything I want more." "Neither can I." More years passed in contentment. They gained more grandchildren as Andrew and Sarah grew their family. Anna married a fellow teacher and settled in Salt Lake City, visiting when she could. Emma achieved her dream, purchasing property near the family ranch and starting her own successful cattle operation. Samuel moved to Denver to pursue art professionally, but returned home frequently. Gus and Andrew ran the ranch together now, with Gus gradually stepping back to let his son take the lead. He was 63 and feeling his age, though still vital and active. Sophia was 59, her hands showing arthritis but her mind sharp and engaged. They spent more time together now, less work and more simply being. They rode out to that spot by the creek where Gus had found her decades ago, still their thinking place. They played with grandchildren who adored them. They read books together in the evenings, discussing ideas and stories. On their 40th anniversary, the entire family gathered at the ranch. All 4 children, spouses, 8 grandchildren ranging from infants to teenagers. The house and property were bursting with noise and life and love. A photographer came from town to take a family portrait. Everyone gathered on the porch, arranged in rows. Sophia and Gus sat in the center, surrounded by the family they had created. "Everyone ready?" the photographer called. "Say cheese." But before he could take the picture, Gus turned to Sophia and kissed her, quick but genuine. Their children groaned good-naturedly, grandchildren giggled, and the photographer captured the moment perfectly. Later, when Sophia saw the finished photograph, she loved it immediately. It showed exactly what their marriage was. Not perfect or posed, but real and full of affection and joy. They hung it in the place of honor in the main room, next to the photograph from their 10th anniversary. The progression told a story. Young couple with small children, mature couple surrounded by family, a life built on love and promises kept. Sophia was 65 when Gus's health began to decline. Nothing dramatic at first, just increasing fatigue, shortness of breath, lack of appetite. Doc Martin diagnosed a weak heart, common in men his age. "How long?" Gus asked bluntly. "Hard to say. Could be years if you take it easy. Could be months if you do not." The doctor looked at both of them seriously. "No more hard physical labor. Rest more. Enjoy your time." Gus tried to follow orders, though it chafed against his nature. Andrew took over all ranch operations, refusing to let his father interfere. The grandchildren kept them busy and entertained. Sophia treasured every moment, knowing their time was now measured. They still shared a bed, still held each other every night, though their physical relationship had evolved over the years into something more focused on comfort and connection than passion. He would stroke her hair while they talked quietly about their day, their memories, their love. She would rest her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat, counting each one as a blessing. 2 years after the diagnosis, on a beautiful spring morning, Gus did not wake up. He had gone peacefully in his sleep, which Sophia supposed was a mercy. But the pain of losing him was almost unbearable. The funeral was large, full of people whose lives Gus had touched. The entire town of Beaver seemed to attend, along with friends and associates from across the territory. Andrew delivered the eulogy, breaking down twice while trying to express what his father had meant to him. Sophia sat in the front row, flanked by her children, and tried to find strength. 44 years of marriage, 44 years of love and partnership and building a life together. How did she continue without him? But she had to. For their children and grandchildren, for the life they had created together, for the sacred promises they had made which did not end with death. The first months were the hardest. The house felt wrong without Gus in it. She kept expecting to see him coming in for lunch, to hear his voice calling her name, to feel his arms around her at night. The grief was physical, a constant ache that never quite lessened. Her children worried about her, offering to have her move in with them. But Sophia refused. This was her home, hers and Gus's. She would not leave it. Slowly, gradually, she found her way forward. She helped Andrew and Sarah with the ranch as much as her aging body allowed. She spoiled her grandchildren outrageously. She wrote in the journal Gus had given her decades ago, recording stories and memories so they would not be lost. And she talked to him. Every evening, sitting on the porch where they had spent so many hours together, she would tell Gus about her day, about the grandchildren's antics, about ranch business, about how much she missed him. "I know you are gone," she would say quietly. "I know I am talking to empty air, but I need to believe you can hear me somehow, that some part of you is still here with me." 5 years after Gus's death, Sophia was 72 and feeling her age. The arthritis had worsened, making simple tasks difficult. Her heart was strong, according to Doc Martin's replacement, but she was tired. Not depressed or giving up, just ready. She gathered her children together one autumn afternoon. "I need to tell you something," she said calmly. "I am not dying, at least not immediately, but I am old and tired, and when my time comes, I want you to know that I am ready. I have had a wonderful life, far better than I ever expected or deserved. You have all made me so proud, but I miss your father terribly, and I am ready to be with him again when it is my time." Anna was crying. Emma held her hand tightly. Andrew looked devastated, and Samuel's eyes were bright with tears. "We are not ready to lose you," Andrew said roughly. "I know, darling, and I am not planning to leave any time soon, but I need you to understand that when I do go, it will not be tragic. It will be a completion of a story that has been beautiful and full." She lived 2 more years, remaining sharp and engaged until nearly the end. She saw Emma get married at 48 to a widowed rancher she had known for years. She held her first great-grandchild, Andrew's daughter's son. She finished writing in her journal, filling it with stories and wisdom for future generations. On a cold December evening, just weeks before what would have been her 51st wedding anniversary, Sophia went to sleep in the bed she had shared with Gus for so many years. She dreamed of dancing with him in the firelight, young again, full of promise and love. She dreamed of riding across the ranch together, of holding their babies, of growing old side by side. She dreamed of all the moments that had made up their life together, all the choices to love and honor each other, all the sacred promises kept. And she did not wake up. The family buried her next to Gus in the small cemetery outside Beaver. The stone read, "Sophia Warren Dalton, beloved wife, mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, 1861–1935. She loved deeply and was deeply loved. Andrew kept the ranch running, honoring his parents' legacy. Anna's children became teachers, carrying on their grandmother's love of learning. Emma's ranch prospered, proving women could succeed in any field they chose. Samuel's art gained recognition, with his pieces showing ranch life exhibited in galleries across the country. The journal Sophia had filled was passed down through generations, becoming a treasured family heirloom. Her great-great-grandchildren would read her words and learn about the woman who had arrived in Utah Territory, believing marriage was just a transaction, and the man who had shown her it was a sacred promise. They would learn about love that grew from unpromising beginnings, about partnership and commitment and building a life together, about choosing each other every single day through easy times and hard. They would learn that sacred promises are not just words spoken in a ceremony, but actions taken daily, respect given freely, kindness offered consistently, love demonstrated through both grand gestures and small moments. They would learn that sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places, that arranged marriages could become great love stories, that strangers could become soulmates, that transactions could transform into something holy, and they would learn that love like theirs, built on mutual respect and genuine partnership, creates a legacy that extends far beyond a single lifetime, that it ripples forward through generations, inspiring and guiding those who come after. In Beaver, Utah, the Dalton Ranch still operates more than a century later, now run by Sophia and Gus's great-great-great-grandchildren. The original house stands, lovingly maintained and protected. The photographs still hang in the main room, showing the progression of a remarkable love story. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the wind blows just right, those who believe in such things swear they can see two figures on the porch, a man and a woman, sitting close together, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold, still together, still in love, still honoring the sacred promises they made so many years ago. The end came not with sadness but with completion. A story finished, a life well lived, a love that transcended time and circumstance. Sophia and Augustus Dalton had shown their family, their community, and all who came after what marriage could be when approached not as obligation but as opportunity. They had proven that sacred promises, once made, could be kept through deliberate daily choices, through respect and partnership and unwavering commitment, through choosing love even when easier options presented themselves. Their legacy lived on in children and grandchildren who understood that real love required work and intention, that it grew through challenge and triumph alike, that it was worth every effort, every compromise, every moment of choosing to honor promises made, from transaction to true union, from strangers to soulmates, from arrangement to sacred bond. This was their story, and it was complete.